was a big deal. That shaped a lot of what.
See, this is
Michael,
why I think it should have been. They should have just did another series. If they would have did like a 10 episode or an 8 episode limited series
but you
with
know
the
why they did it
same.
this way, right?
Yeah, I
Because
mean, look,
because of
yeah,
what they're getting
I
now.
know why.
$1 billion. $1 billion.
I know why.
That's why.
Yeah, exactly. But if they wanted to really do it right, like I said, if I was in charge, I would have made it. I would have done it a few ways. I would have done either as a limited series or I would have did straight Marvel. I would have made like a Michael Jackson cinematic universe where you had Michael Jackson, multiple Michael Jackson movies and sequels, a Quincy Jones
They can still do that now.
movie series and sequel. You had the villain origin story of John Brown.
Oh God! Oh!
Listen, I love that.
I'm kind of kidding. I'm kind of kidding.
Though, that could be on the table now too, because Michael. Here's what we know right now in 2026. After everything we've gone through, him passing away, the allegations, leaving Neverland, Michael Jackson's business is still pretty good. Good or bad. People's language here, Chris. People in a big way still give a fuck about Michael Jackson 17 years later. Whether you love him or hate him.
In a big way.
And that's claim.
And the crazy thing. And the thing about that is the fact that the musical was like the soft launch for the biopic.
And better biopic record. And better biopic.
You know what I'm saying? And even the musical did a better, more nuanced job.
Without question.
Of explaining like Michael Jackson's creative process, doing a much better job of talking about the complicated relationship between Michael and Joseph Jackson, and talking about how Joe's influence shaped Michael into the person that he was, because Michael saw so much of Joseph in himself. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons why he moved the way that he did, because he knew that he was probably like Joe more than any of his other sons. And so, especially when it came to the business aspect of it and the discipline aspect of it. And the musical did an excellent job at that, so much so that it was actually surprising to me. Yeah. And they made Joe into this villainous, like, the guy. You ever watch the Penelope Pit Stop like cartoons when the Paul Lynde played the bad guy with the big hat and the monocle? That's what Joe Jackson was.
Yeah, and that bothered me. And honestly, like the funny thing about the Joe Jackson story in the biopic is that Joe was actually worse than what they portrayed. However, I don't like the fact that they don't give Joe, especially because Joe is a massive part of the story, here in the movie. Like, he's probably the second most important character in the story, if we're being real honest here. There should be at least a little bit of section of why Joe was the way he was. He didn't just become this because he wanted to. I need a story why Joe Jackson was the way he was with his kids and with Michael. So it was very important.
MCU, you need a cinematic universe where there's like a Joe Jackson origin story movie.
It would not hurt to have the story start in 1940, 1950 something, when Joe was. Give it 5 minutes in front. But we need a Joe Jackson story to lead us into why he was the way he was.
Yeah, EJ,
that bothered me too also.
Yeah, and I'm glad, because I listened to the episode that you and your wife did, and I appreciate the fact that you brought that point up, because you're right, though. I mean, they made Joseph look like this cartoonish villain to the point of like, okay, like, yeah, like the one scene I think they really got right was when he was whipping young Michael with a belt before he called him Big Nose. Like, that made me genuinely care about young Michael, and yes, it did tug at my heartstrings on how I look at Joseph. But to your point, though, is like they made him so two-dimensional, or one-dimensional rather, I should say.
Correct.
That you're like, okay, why is Joseph that way? And what people tend to forget is that he had to come up during the pre-civil rights era.
Bingo.
And if you touch on that, again, you don't have to agree with how he went about it, but if you can understand, which is why I think Thanos was such a huge hit on the MCU, is like, you don't have to agree with how he got there, but at least you understand his philosophy. And to an extent, some people are like, okay, I kind of get where he's coming from. Like, if you can take that same approach with Joseph, of like, hey, whether you love him, hate him, or feel indifferent, he got his family out of the slums of Gary, Indiana. That is his greatest achievement, and it should be shown as such on screen. Like, you don't have to agree with what he did, But the fact of the matter is that he got his family out of Gary, Indiana, and he created a family that is the equivalent of entertainment royalty. Like that's our royal family to us.
And there's a scene.
The Jackson stories did a better job of fleshing out Joe's story in a way that this movie did not do that, unfortunately.
And there's one scene in the movie where that I felt like it was a poignant scene that was important, where Joe was right. It was when he asked him to do the victory tour. And he says, you know, you want to be your own man and you want to be surrounded by people that just say yes to you.
Yes.
Is that what you want? What kind of sense does that make? And he was right. But
we don't know that until years later. We don't know that until
we don't know it until years later. But that's what I said. The screenwriter took for granted the fact that we already know Michael's story, so they didn't bother to flesh it out in the script. But he was right in that one moment. But because he's this villainous character throughout the whole movie, it's like, you know, you repel it when he actually does make a valid point.